Welcome back to another episode of Sex in the One. How are you, KB?
I am great. I'm very, very, very excited because we have a special guest.
Same. I'm so excited. And I think the community, we've talked, on our pods previously, but the community that we have built, we are very blessed to have. And we have so many like-minded individuals that we connect with through the socials. And one of those people we connected with was this wonderful human being called Lex. And we have had the pleasure of not only connecting over the socials and, initiating that connection, because, like-minded, same industry, same everything. But we then also connected in person at one of her events. We'd love to introduce you to Sex with Lex. Lex.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm so excited.
Oh, we're excited to have you. Thanks for
We are
joining
like
us. And
really,
yeah,
really excited. Can I start off with like probably the question? I don't know if you get asked this the most, but it's certainly the top question for me because people are going to ask this. So you are a sexologist. Is that what you would? Is that
Correct.
the official term? Tell
Yes.
us what is a
a
sexologist?
sexologist. First
Uh,
question.
I try and do it. When I explain it, I try and be very simple, I guess, about it. Basically, a sexologist is someone that specializes in human sexuality and sexual function, sexual health. It can mean so many different things to different people, and I think it just depends on what path you want to go. Some people will go down the sex therapy path, um, but I've chosen to go sort of down the sex education path. So.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fun little career.
How did
How
you land here? Yeah, like how did you get to this point?
So I have a history of working in social work. So I did a lot of work with vulnerable families and young people. And one of the things that I noticed was that there is a huge gap in sex education for these young people and families, and they are at the highest risk of, you know, inappropriate sexual touch, sexual behaviors, that sort of thing. And I realized there wasn't really any education or any accessibility to education for these people. And so I got really interested in that. And it sort of just took me down, yeah, the path doing my master's of sexology. And, I
where,
just,
whereabouts does one do their masters of sexology?
it's through Curtin University in WA. It's the
No.
only place in Australia that does that specific one. I think the University of New South Wales does a Masters of Sexual Health. I think it's a little bit more specific. But yeah, it's very niche.
Yes, definitely. And I think what we've discovered, like through our own discussions and just speaking with other, professionals in that area as well, is that the sex education doesn't stop. Like, at school in year four, five, six, you have, your little class and you talk about those things. And then you go into real life and these real scenarios play out and you're still questioning things and you don't know every part and how it works and all that, and you get put in some vulnerable situations. I know I did when I was younger. And still, we're finding that grown adults, there's this massive gap, like not just in the sector, like I'm social work background, so is Chris as well. Um, yes, there's those vulnerable communities, but then there's also, what about us? Like, well, there's heaps of people that there's these gaps in just general
100%. Yeah, and that's one of the
education.
things that I'm really passionate about as well is furthering education for adults because, we sort of see a lot of the sexual health and sex education happening in school. And it's really not that great, that it's getting a lot better now, I will say from, what I know and what I've read. But one of the things as well that is not really included in that discussion is pleasure. And so, as adults, it's a really good place to be able to work where I can include pleasure and it is appropriate. And, talking about everyone's pleasure and not just when the man ejaculates, that's the end. It's sort of, how can everyone that's involved have pleasure?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a really special space to be working when I can educate adults because there's stuff that I'm still learning. I think, in my late 20s when I found out that if you get cold sores, you have the herpes virus, and then you have that for life. And so I remember thinking, isn't this something that I should have been taught in school? Like,
Yes.
should I not know that? And so I just am really, yeah, passionate about educating people, and there's no shame in not knowing. I think that's
Mm.
a big thing. People do get a bit
Well,
weird about,
you know,
yeah.
when we met last week, we had the conversation, and we commonly refer to ourselves as sex enthusiasts, and we like to sex experts, right? And I was saying to you that when we did a you can explain more about your trivia night, but like when we went to your trivia night, and I was saying. I'm imagining I'm not going to know very much because I tend to like the feeling rather than I don't know what the things are called, and
Yes.
I'm going to be 53, and I still don't have like a great knowledge of all the bits. You know,
And
like
you don't necessarily need to have a huge amount of knowledge. I think, there are some things like, for example, like STIs and education around that is something that I'm very passionate about, not because I think that they're bad and no one should get them, because there is so much shame and stigma around them that I
Mm.
think, educating people on that is helpful in reducing that shame and stigma. But,
how
you're so
about
right.
do you go about educating someone about that?
Do you know what? I do a lot of education through conversations and, as you know, the trivia. So we host Clitorally
Yes.
Trivia, which is absolutely fabulous.
So much fun. So much
Uh,
fun.
Oh, so good. But I think that's a really good opportunity to educate people. When we were coming up with the questions, there were questions that Laura and I both didn't know the answer to. We were
Mm.
sort of, it's one of those things as experts, quote unquote. Uh, there is still learning. And so I like to use that as an opportunity to teach, but also, conversations with people. It doesn't have to be super structured. I think, yeah, good communication and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of just dropping sex into conversations.
Well, yeah,
I think you're in the right place.
Yes, correct.
you look for any excuse to talk about sex.
Yeah, that's me. It gets a bit old, I think. We're at the dinner table and I'm like, so this lube that I tried, and people are like, oh, for God's sake, like again.
My sisters were here a couple of weeks back and I was making them like a coffee or a tea, right? And we're all sitting there. It was my daughter's birthday. I can't remember whose birthday it was. I think it was my husband's birthday. Anyway, we're all sitting at the table and she's like, I've just figured out like how to release this, I don't know, this tension or whatever she was going on about, like how to cure this problem. I'm like, it's sex, right? And she's like, no, no, it's not. I'm like, no, it is. Like, I'm telling you, it is.
I was just about to say, yeah, it's definitely sex, surely.
Well, it's the O, right? It's the O. It's the release of all those beautiful hormones. But no, I was sorry. I went on a bit off topic, but I thought that that was funny because I'm like genuinely, that's the answer. I know that that's the answer.
It
Yeah.
is. I love sex. I think, if it doesn't give it away by the fact that I study it, it's a huge hobby of mine, let's just say.
Oh, I love that. One of your main taglines is taking the taboo out of sex. Can you go into that a little bit more? Other than the education side of things, how do you like to do that? And how, other than in conversation, like if you were to start a conversation with a random, like how would you bring this topic into their perspective?
Do you know what? It's actually really, really easy when I talk to people that I don't know, because a lot of people will say, what do you do? And I
Yeah,
say, I'm a sexologist. And
it's
people are then
opening.
like, what is a sexologist? And then I sort of go in and start talking very freely and very openly about things. I don't go, too hard too quickly. I sort of suss the room. But I find that, having conversations around sex, that when I am talking, then people feel comfortable to ask questions. And a lot of the time I get people say all the time, oh, I'm into this really weird thing. Like, is this normal?
Yes.
And a lot of the time, it is so normal. Like, there's so many kinks, for example, out there that people haven't even heard of, that I think as long as people are being relatively safe, there is no kink without risk.
What is the weirdest kink you've heard of?
I don't think any of them are weird. I think that, I think there are
That's a
ones
trick
that,
question, wasn't it?
I feel like that was a trick question. I'm like, hang on. No, I think that like there are
Well, there's
some
got to
that I
be
hadn't.
something you think's weird. I mean, surely.
There's stuff that I wouldn't engage in for myself. So there's this, I don't actually even know what it's called now that I think about it, but these people like they vacuum themselves in like latex and like it's so they
Mm.
can't move. And
Oh,
that for me just sounds terrifying. That sounds scary. Like I need to be able to move. So
Yeah, yeah, fair
that's
enough.
yeah, that's one that I sort of was a bit taken back by. But there's one, and I think we touched on this at trivia as well. Water sports, so
Water sport.
piss
I missed
play.
that answer. I did not. I was like, what do you mean by water sport? KV had to fill
Yeah,
me in, but
yeah. So piss play
yeah.
essentially, and that was that's one of the most popular in Australia,
yes.
and people don't talk about it, but you'd be surprised by how many people are really interested in that. I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time in the kink community in Melbourne. And so I've gone to a lot of events. I've seen a lot of different things. I think I'm probably at a point now where there's not a lot that shocks me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to sort of answer what is the weirdest kink that I've heard because I've seen so many and you get to a point where yeah, like in the masters, we have to do a unit which is sexual attitude realignment. I think that's what it's called, SAT,
Right.
and we get exposed to a lot of different things. And the idea is like sexual explicit material, and the idea is that we will be able to respond in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah.
And so, with exposure to that sort of material, it is you get to a point where it doesn't shock you anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You're like
yeah,
desensitized in a way. Like, but that
yeah,
unconscious bias does come out sometimes, I guess. Like,
yeah. And I
but
think
you
one of the
just
things,
learn to keep
yeah,
it at bay.
yeah, and we are taught. Like, there's this one lecturer who always says, we all have judgments, we all judge people, and we can't say this is a place free of judgment, but we are accepting,
Yeah.
of that. So,
And you
yeah,
do
it,
your
it
best.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do your best to sort of to to be open. I mean, there are some things that some people just can't handle. There's sometimes we have to have discussions around sex offending and that sort of thing, and I find it really difficult to um, be judgment free in those situations. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things that we just sort of we try and keep an open mind.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's interesting, when we had the trivia night and I was giving away my book and I said, "Oh, name a weird sex act that you've done and if it's in the book, you can have the book." And like the first thing as you would know what came out was squirting. And I'm with you. I've heard everything. I've, probably done it. And squirting's like, "Oh, isn't that normal to me?"
Yeah,
Like so
that's what I thought as well. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh,
Yet I'm still here, yet to
Saturday
master
night."
that skill.
Sorry?
Yet I'm still here, yet to master that skill.
Well, you will one day. Well, if
Mm.
you want to, you don't have to if you don't want to. But like for me, that was just like I felt that was a G-rated thing, and
Oh, I see. I'm the same because I remember you said, "Oh, something weird or like unusual," and then someone said squirting, and I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
oh,
Mm.
yeah." Like it's actually a reminder to me because everything is so like normal for me, and
yeah,
hearing that, I
Yeah.
mean, that maybe is weird and unusual for some people, but yeah, I was
Yeah.
very much the same. I was like, "Oh, squirting."
yeah, and that was what was really nice about the spaces that you create for people. Because someone like me, I felt
Yes.
perfectly at home. I felt welcome. I felt accepted. Not that I don't feel accepted where
Yeah.
else I go, but it was just beautiful to share that
Yeah.
space with people who just naturally get you without
Yeah.
even having to
Yeah.
have a chat.
It was extremely comforting, like walking into that space, sort of not knowing what you're walking into, but everyone having, everyone up for a good laugh, a bit of fun, and then connecting on, level. Like, I think you just did it, taking the taboo out of sex. That was it in
Yeah,
that moment.
it is really good. And look, I think, Laura and I try really hard in those spaces to make it less confrontational with sex. So obviously we do talk about sex a lot, but we try to make it comfortable. We try to make it fun.
Mm.
We try and get people involved if they're willing to and, able to. But we just yeah, I think it's really lovely. Every the ones that we've done, I just think Oh, everyone's so lovely. Everyone's so into it. I'm so glad that people are having a good time. So hearing that is really nice
Yeah.
because sometimes I worry that it's some people find it a bit full on or something.
Well, I
Like,
think like to be going to that event, like you've sort of got to be understanding of what you're sort of walking into, and I think your Instagram like page that gives a great insight. But once you're there, like even if people aren't engaging, it's so I learned so much, and one of the facts I learned, I wrote it down, was what percentage of vulva owners have never had an orgasm, and I was mind blown by the answer. Do you want to talk to that, Lex?
well, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you think about, well, I'm not even going to talk about penis owners because a lot of the time they do reach orgasm. Um, but yeah, it is interesting, and so the answer, I will say the answer
Yeah.
was 5 to 10%
Yeah.
of vulva owners, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's never having reached orgasm. That's partnered, solo, with a toy, without a toy, have never reached orgasm. And that is only the reported ones. So,
Yeah.
there would be people out there that haven't reported that. That's an estimate. And I imagine that it would probably be a lot more.
Yeah.
And that sort of brings me back to the focus around pleasure in education, that
Yes.
there hasn't necessarily been that education on how to pleasure a vulva owner, for example.
Yes.
The clitoris hasn't really been studied as like anywhere near as much as it should have been.
Mm.
um, and I think there are so many ways to for a woman or a vulva owner to reach orgasm, and everyone is so different. And it makes me really sad that if people are
Yeah.
wanting to reach orgasm that they can't. It's I think as well, like on the other side of that as well, is that maybe sometimes we do need to take that off the table and say, this isn't the goal, and let's focus on
Yes.
pleasure and what actually feels
Yes.
good to help you get there, rather
Yes.
than we want to orgasm now, and without knowing what is good, what feels nice, do you like it this way? Do you like a toy? Do you like hands? Do you like oral? Like, what do you like?
Yeah.
And that's
Some
a
people wouldn't even
huge,
know the answer to that, would they? They'd be,
no, exactly. There's
I've
so many people that don't know. Yeah.
Mm.
I've got a thing with the names. So they call foreplay the thing that happens before the sex, but the foreplay is often what makes um,
Mhm.
and be able to
Mhm.
come. And so why is that foreplay? So that you might skip foreplay and have the play, but it's main play. That's my main play. That's the main
Well,
play.
yeah. This is the
You
whole
know what I
thing,
mean?
right? And
Part of the play.
well, it is because we're all taught, well, not so much anymore, but we've always, historically been taught that sex is for reproductive purposes. Let's be really honest. Like, when a lot of the sex education was happening, it was focused around sex is for reproductive
Mhm.
purposes.
And not
And
getting
so,
pregnant.
and not
Mhm.
getting pregnant, right?
Yeah.
And so that whole thing is centered around the man ejaculating inside the woman. And that is the end of sex because you have done what you needed to do, what you came
Yeah.
here to do.
Tick. Mm.
And so now that, majority of people I talk to are having sex not to reproduce, it's kind of interesting how then the conversation shifts. And you
Yeah.
know we talk about, well, what is the point of it? Is it for everyone to orgasm, or is it that does everyone just want to feel pleasure? And I always say, like, pleasure is the first thing you want to do before you even think or talk about an orgasm. Pleasure, what feels good. Take an orgasm off the table completely. Just let's say
Yes.
we're not doing that. We're not, no one's coming. That's it. We're done.
Yep.
Like, we're just, yeah, no one's coming. No one's allowed to come. And so then that really focuses on, what feels good, what actually feels good for you as an individual that hasn't been taught to me by our sexual scripts that we have got from sex education, from society, and that sort of thing. And I've started doing that with myself, and it's absolutely like changes your life, honestly.
Yeah. It would. The other part that you mentioned earlier about the pleasure, and then you mentioned it once or twice, the consent. Like you also mention a lot through your socials about arousal not being consent. Can you speak to that as well?
I will die on this hill.
Mm.
Arousal, any bodily response is not consent. So there's a physiological response and then there's a psychological response.
Yeah.
If a man, so it's called non-concordance, it's called sexual
Mm.
non-concordance. So if a man has an erection, that doesn't necessarily mean that he wants to engage in sex. If a woman is self lubricating, same thing. And, we've seen in the past, not so much anymore, but, that being used as consent, implied consent. But it's not. It's really not. And I always say to people, non-concordance is such a common thing, particularly in vulva owners. And I think it goes the other way as well. Like, you might be really interested in, I really want to fuck right now. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. Sorry.
Yeah, you're not fair.
Sorry. I was just like, oops. But if you really
No
want to,
problem.
like, if you really want to go, have sex and you're like, yeah, let's go. Like, I'm feeling like I'm horny, but then you're not self lubricating. You can't, get an erection. That's also non concordant. So we can't always rely on our bodies to mirror what we're thinking or what we're wanting. And
Mm,
so, in that way, we need to be really careful with assuming that arousal is consent, because it is absolutely not. I think it's consent needs to be explicit. It needs to be
mhm.
freely given. It needs to be. It can change at any
Enthusiastic.
time. Enthusiastic. Communicate about it, and just because you start something doesn't mean you have to finish. So I'm
Yeah,
very much an advocate for consent can be withdrawn at any time, which
100%.
everyone should agree with and know. But unfortunately, there are still some people out there, I'm sure, that
Mm.
not are not on the same page.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you. But I think what I loved from what I saw through what you were promoting was that there are various ways to communicate whether consent is given or not. Like one of them was, and I think that's what sparked my little like, oh, I've got to ask that question, was I think you mentioned like, what do you like? Where would you like me to touch? So like you're asking that person and then that person is reciprocating with the actual movement or the action.
Yeah, I think some people think that consent has to be this. Can I have sex with you?
Yes, no,
Yes,
maybe, yeah.
done. Let's have sex.
Yeah.
It's you can
I
do
had
it in
that
a
happen to me once.
Really?
Oh,
Yes,
really?
I was kissing him and we were lying down and like we were lying down on a bed and I was kissing him and he stopped kissing me and he goes, "Do you consent?" And I thought, "I don't fucking now, you idiot." Like,
See, that's the problem, is that consent then becomes this tick box where it needs to
Yes.
be a conversation. And,
well,
you know,
it's the inference in that moment was that he thinks that women are lying. Like I took it to him thinking women are lying when they say that they didn't agree with it. So he's like making sure he ticks it off. Like
Yeah.
it seemed kind of like I didn't. Yeah, it made me not want to consent.
Well, that
I
didn't
mean,
flow.
no,
No,
that look, good on him for trying. I think,
Yeah.
at least we're
Yes.
trying at this point. But there's so many things you can say. Be like, do you like being touched here? Is it okay if I touch your arm? Is it okay if I kiss you? What would you like me to do?
Mm.
How does that feel? Would you like me to keep going? There's so many ways of doing it that can be really sexy, but also like giving you that power to say, yeah, I like that, or no, I don't, without having to be like, no. Like, it could sort of be like, oh, no, I prefer when you do this, or
Yeah.
did you want to try this instead? Rather than, do you consent? Yes. No.
Yeah.
yeah,
But then
Like,
that also opens up to like,
consent.
yeah. But I think the way that you've shared that and articulated it, like when I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, like that really opens up for the pleasure to actually occur as well. Like they're intertwined.
it absolutely, and it is, that communicating and learning about each other's pleasure during sex, and not so
Mm.
much. We're not robots, so getting consent should not be. In
Do
my
you
mind, it
want
shouldn't
to?
be. Do you want to have sex? Yes, and
Yeah.
then that's the end of the story. I think it's an
Yeah.
ongoing conversation during sex. It's sexy. I think it's sexy. I love it. Like, you're interested in my pleasure and what I like. Yes, please.
Yes.
Like, I
Yeah.
dig
Do
that.
you find that you work with a lot of people or encounter a lot of people whose partner isn't interested in their pleasure? Because I've certainly had a lot of people I've interacted with that have said to me things of the nature, "Oh, my partner used to try and help me to come, but now I just get the toy out because he not can't be bothered, but something in that vein." Yeah. Do
I
you have
don't think it's
that?
so much that they don't care about their partner's pleasure. I think that, people do become complacent, and,
Mhm.
particularly in long-term relationships, you need to work at keeping the sex alive. It's not something that's automatic for a lot of people. A lot of people have to, actively make that choice that they're going to work on that and work on it together. And I think it depends on what you get out of sex and what I think
Mm.
you're looking for, because some people purely do just want to have sex just to have a baby, and that's fine, and there's no issue with that, I think. But, again, it comes back to what we are taught, and, having those conversations with your partner is so important, because I could say, I really like it when you touch my clit and finger me, and that
Mm.
a guy could hear that and go, oh, okay, that's what I need to do. But that's what you could do for me. But, every single person is different. I think that understanding, having conversations, it's not ever one size fits all. And I think, yeah, I wouldn't say that people don't try, or don't care about their partner's pleasure. I just don't think it becomes a priority.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's why I always say communicate, have conversations about it. You don't know what you
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. That's why I answered that question. There was a question at the trivia night, something about I don't know. The answer was communicate. It wasn't communication, but I thought it was communication. I think it was the one about why
Oh,
do
why
the
do
couples?
people, yeah, why do
Yes.
people seek sex therapy? Yeah.
Yes, and I was like, because they're not communicating. Because my like being in a like long term relationship, I'm married. I've been married for 12 years. That would be my answer, because when you talk to other couples, they're like, oh, this isn't going right in this space. Or I'm like, you just need to talk. You just need to be able to have that effective communication to then move through the problem. But that was
Mm.
not the answer, and I was really
No.
taken aback by that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think communication is a big part of it, but yeah, mismatched libido is the main reason, which, is,
I've experienced that. Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people
Mm.
have at some point in some
Yes.
form. So yeah, it's interesting. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
It is
So
very
can I
interesting.
just ask? I know you briefly mentioned it earlier, but you said your interest is a lot about educating about STIs and stuff.
Yes.
What's your advice for people? How often to get tested? What should they get tested for? Just give us like a brief, rundown of what you think is the go.
So I recommend getting tested every 3 to 6 months, and that is a huge sort of window. And that is because, I mean, if you're sexually active, that is then based on, you need to, think, how many sexual partners am I having? Am I using protection? What kinds of sex am I having? Um, and, weighing up the risks. I think that in most STI panels, they'll do chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and HIV. I think that's it that they mainly do. Am I missing one?
That's what I've
Maybe.
had.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. But also, then, there's stuff like HPV, which a lot of people don't even know that they have, HSV, so herpes, which a lot of people carry but don't know that they have. But and then we've got MGen as well, which is a new. I don't know if you've heard of MGen.
No.
It's like it's the up and coming STI.
I thought BV was.
Up and coming.
I thought I was good knowing that BV was now one, but no.
No, so MGen is Mycoplasma genitalium. So it's very similar to chlamydia, um, but they don't screen for it on a standard STI panel. And I recently found out that that is because so MGen is now becoming resistant to antibiotics. So it's really hard to treat. So you might end up on like 3 rounds of antibiotics to treat it. It's just, and this is not a scare thing.
Interesting.
I'm not saying this to scare
No.
people. I'm just, don't be alarmed if you're not tested for it, because a lot of the time people won't have symptoms, and then it sort of comes up to, do we need a test if you're not symptomatic? Like, once you start getting symptoms, they will test. But yeah, it's very
That
interesting.
I went to the doctors to
Yes,
get
the new,
the
yeah.
STI test in March this year. And I was absolutely shocked that I walked in and asked for an STI test, and it took me 50-minute appointment to get her to agree to test me. She was like,
Yeah.
But has your partner cheated on you? I said, I don't have a partner. And then she said, well, then why do you need one? And I go, because I haven't had one for 6 months and I like to get tested every 6 months. Have you got
Mm.
any symptoms? No. Well, then why do you need one? I'm like,
It's really, it's really concerning that, you have to go in there and advocate for yourself. And a lot of people can't do that. It is really, for some people, getting tested is a big deal. And I remember the first time I got tested, it was a huge, I was so scared. Like, I don't want to ask that. That's, I thought that was so embarrassing. And, I find it really disappointing when healthcare professionals, don't look after sexual health in the same way that they
Yeah.
maybe would something else. And I think there is still some shame and stigma, and this is not every healthcare professional. I think this is just,
No.
generally in society. Because of that, I think people still do get a little bit, oh, like, I don't
yeah.
know.
And
Yeah.
she had to ring up her supervisor to find out what to test me for as well. And then she was
Oh,
telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm telling her what I could do.
Mm. Well,
wow.
I had the opposite experience where Anth had, well, he'd had like a genital infection, I would say, had nothing to do with me because I'm like, and they accused him, like they said, oh, look, I think you might need to talk to your wife and see if she's like straight, and also asked him the same thing. And like, we're happily married. We don't have time for that. And if we did, I think I might not, I'd have some inkling. I was offended. I was like, why would I come back? Like, when you are making these assumptions, like I get it, it can happen. I understand that. And they don't know our relationship. But I was like, you are not enticing me to want to come and do this. Like you are, it's confronting as it is to have to
Yeah.
rock up and say, hey, I've got this issue here. And making you feel that way. And I was like to my like, yeah, it was he was like,
It
I'm telling
actually,
you, this is not
yeah.
the case. But it was, yeah, it was really awkward.
It has nothing to do with like that. I think, this is the thing. They don't need to know what's going on. It's, if it's a
No.
medical situation, you go in and you get medical treatment. And, would they be asking those sort of questions if it wasn't a
Exactly.
sexual one? I don't know. So,
Exactly.
I hate that people have to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
Like my GP now knows I go in there and she's like, another STI check. I'm like, yes, please. Thank you. I'll take the lot.
Yeah.
But it comes, it comes with time and experience and, ease of talking about sex. But, I do say to people, if you ever feel like they're saying no, you can leave and just go and see someone else.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you shouldn't have to advocate for yourself. I think that
Mm.
they're entitled to seek medical care.
Yeah. Yes, there are. Lex, where can people find you? Where can people locate you? What's your handle on Instagram? Go and give Lex a like and a follow and follow the content because it's so awesome. You learn new things every day. And come and join us at the next Clitorally Trivia as well, whenever
Oh,
that may
yes.
be.
Yes, we are booking in our next one. So we've got, I think, one more before the end of the year. So we will be announcing that on our page. So my Instagram is Sex with Lex Melb,
Yes.
MELB. That's also my TikTok, but TikTok aren't loving me. They keep banning the
Oh,
videos. So I don't know what I'm doing
prohibited
wrong.
content.
Yeah, do you know what? I try so hard to like make it so that it's friendly, but I'm doing something wrong clearly.
TikTok's not
Uh,
like my book because I've got
Because you're
photos.
naked.
Yeah.
See, that's what it is. They're just it's very upset. You know the stuff that I see on TikTok as well, and then I'm like, come on,
I
like
agree. It doesn't make sense.
like it's not even bad. It's me dancing at the camera with like my glasses on, and something like check the expiry date of your condoms, which I think is a reasonable
Yes.
thing. And it's like, no, you're banned. Sorry.
Oh, I love your content. I can't wait for people to start following you because I love how direct you are. You're to the point, you get the message across, and it's really relatable. So keep doing what you are doing and continue educating me and everyone else because I need it. And yeah, we all need that. We all need a Lex in our lives. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fabulous.
So
Yeah.
fun. Can't wait to see you at the next Clitorally Trivia.
Woo.
Absolutely.